Okay. So let's begin with this question, the proverbial elephant in the room. Both the Texas Democratic Party and your colleague in the House, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, asked for you to resign. How do you respond to that?
Well, listen, no one should be surprised to see Democrats playing politics and to see them attacking and trying to attack strong conservative leaders. That's something Democrats have done for a long time. I do think it's really cynical for them to be trying to take advantage of what was a tragic event that occurred yesterday in Washington. The terrorist attack on the Capitol, it was despicable. Those criminals who attacked the citadel of democracy. That was a horrific thing for our nation. And every one of those terrorists who committed that attack need to be prosecuted, fully prosecuted. They need to go to jail for a very long time.
How did they get inside?
By all appearances, they came in mass and they overpowered law enforcement that was protecting the Capitol. Now, let me say that the Capitol Police and the brave men and women of law enforcement, Secret Service, they went in, they fought back, they pressed back, and eventually, thank God, they cleared the protesters from the Capitol. They stopped the attack. And yesterday, I have to tell you, I was very proud of our country that after that attack, that we returned to the Capitol, we returned to the Senate floor, we returned to debating and to doing the people's business, and we finished our work in the Capitol, in the Senate chamber. That was the right thing to do. It was something certainly that I was encouraging, and all of my colleagues agreed we needed to go back and we needed to finish our work last night, and that's what we did.
So then after all of this happened, why did you continue to object well, particularly one state, Pennsylvania, and its certified results?
Well, the purpose of the objection that I raised yesterday was to protect the integrity of our elections. And what I proposed, and I did this with a group of 11 senators, 11 senators came together, and we proposed that Congress appoint an election commission that would be credible, that would be impartial, and that could conduct an emergency 10-day audit into the election returns, into the very serious allegations of voter fraud, that could consider the evidence and make a definitive adjudication. I still think that would have been the right approach. I think it's the approach Congress should have taken. I think if we'd taken that approach, that election commission with credibility would have helped both sides of the aisles, Republicans and Democrats, have a far greater trust in the integrity of the election, would have helped resolve these claims. Unfortunately, the majorities in Congress didn't agree, and so that was not, at the end of the day, what Congress chose to do.
You talk about these being credible claims of election fraud, and yet your colleague Lindsey Graham last night on the floor of the Senate said that you really didn't see that these claims of election fraud do not exist, and that in fact what you were doing on the floor last night was playing politics. How do you respond to that?
Well, listen, voter fraud has been a persistent problem in our elections. We have seen it over and over again. Just a couple of months ago in the state of Texas, a woman was indicted in a nursing home for taking over 100 ballots and filling them out on behalf of seniors, many of which were not capable of casting their own ballots, and she's facing indictment now for that fraud. We've seen persistent challenges of fraud in Texas and across the country. And one of the things I talked about on the Senate floor yesterday is that even if you don't agree on these particular challenges, that recent polling shows 39% of Americans believe this last election, quote, was rigged. That is a terrifying, that is a horrifying outcome. That is a real threat to the integrity of our elections. And so what I urged my colleagues, and I spoke very directly to Democrats and Republicans, even if you personally don't share those concerns, and I'll tell you, I have heard those concerns from thousands of Texans just in the last few weeks, but even if you don't share those concerns, it should be in all of our interests to see a credible process that resolves these claims, that considers the evidence, that hears it fairly, and that makes a determination. That having a process to audit the returns, I think, was a very common sense step. I think it's the right step to take, but unfortunately, it was not the step that Congress chose.
So is it possible that the 39% of Americans which cite in part believe that there was election fraud or that it was rigged because the president has repeated that even before the votes were ever cast, and that other senators, including you and Josh Hawley, have also continued to talk about that. I mean, where is there uh, the line between people believing something on their own and they believe it because they're constantly told that's what the truth is?
Well, Tom, I think you have to draw a distinction. I agree with you that the president's language and rhetoric often goes too far. I think yesterday, in particular, the president's language and rhetoric crossed a line and it was reckless. I disagree with it. And I have disagreed with the president's language and rhetoric for the last 4 years and have said so many, many times. If you look to what I have said, you will not find me using the same language or rhetoric. What I have said is that serious claims of illegality need to be considered, they need to be adjudicated, and they need to be considered fairly based on the facts and based on the evidence. That's very different from the things the president is saying.
So where do we go from here? The country is clearly divided to the point that you have en masse people breaking into the Capitol, violence breaking out, members of your own congressional body being, uh, taken away from the floor of the Senate. What's next?
Well, I think our country is badly divided right now, and I hope that there is a time of healing and coming together. I think part of that healing and coming together is not engaging in the kind of incendiary rhetoric that has turned American against American. And so I try when I'm engaging with others not to engage in that rhetoric, and I encourage others likewise just tone things down a little bit. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean we will stop to have substantive disagreements on policy issues. Where we are now, yesterday, at the end of the day, at the end of many, many hours, Congress certified the results of the election, and the consequence is Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States, and we will go through a peaceful transition of power as we have done over and over and over again in our nation's history. That is one of the hallmarks of our democracy, and that will happen here again. Now, unfortunately, we're getting ready to start a period with Joe Biden as president, with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House. And I think many harmful policy ideas are going to be proposed by those Democratic majorities, ideas that are going to hurt jobs in the state of Texas, that are going to raise taxes in Texas, that are going to hammer Texas small businesses. And I fully expect to do everything I can to resist those bad policy ideas, because my job is to fight for 29 million Texans, to fight for more jobs and higher wages and more opportunity, to fight to defend the men and women of law enforcement, to fight to defend our security, and to fight to defend our constitutional rights. And I've done that every day in the Senate for the last 8 years, and I'll continue doing that every day going forward.
Last question. As you talk about the new administration coming in a couple of weeks, given that there are only a couple of weeks left, do you support either the invocation of the 25th Amendment to remove the president or an impeachment based on what happened yesterday?
No, I don't. I think that is on the part of Democrats really vindictiveness. I understand that they really hate Donald Trump. He will be leaving office in 13 days. He will be leaving office at noon on January 20th. That is pursuant to the rule of law. That is pursuant to the peaceful transition of power from one administration to another. And I think the attacks you're seeing right now are really partisan spite. And I don't think they're helpful to this country and to the healing process that I hope we go through.
Cruz, anything else you want to add?
I think that's good.
All right. Thank you very much. Be safe.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Tom.
Sure.